Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Welcome to the stream, guys. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're theory crafting. We're talking about some of the changes coming to ESO, and we got design parameters the other day. Also, hello to Chicken and everybody else who's already here. We got some design parameters the other day from Zos from ZeniMax Online Studios. So we're gonna look at that. But I just I got a note that apparently Zos made a bit of a mistake and they released some of the skills to in non-English to the non-English client. So I guess we have some data leaks. So this is from Hyper, and I think we're going to start off by just taking a look and seeing what he's discovered here, and maybe we'll give everybody. I'm just going to double check the stream, make sure everything's good to go while everybody is coming in. I see people popping in. And then we'll go from there. We also have Luna is going to be probably joining us today. I hope so. And I think Daedric might also be joining us. Let me see here. Daedric's just saying I think he got some last minute work, so he's not going to be able to make it. He was like, I'll pop in for part of it, and it looks like, let me just read here. It looks like he might not be able to make it at all. Oh, okay. It looks like we're gonna get some info on what they've changed to the skills just without the numbers. Okay, yeah, I guess we will see. Is Luna here? I think Luna's here. Luna, what's going on?
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm doing a bunch of stuff, but I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, so it looks like Hyper, it looks like, well, you might have access to this too, but it looks like for non-English speaking countries with ESO, they accidentally released some of the skills for the Dragon Knight.
Let's watch this. I was not aware. Honestly, I'm
Yeah,
not keeping up with everything.
right, right. Well, cool. Well, then, yeah, I'll let much of this play, and maybe we'll chat over it, and then we can talk on the other side.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into it.
ZOS did an oopsie, and with the latest maintenance, they updated skill descriptions in the German version of the game with new reworked DK abilities, which are supposed to come out later. In this video, I'm gonna go over all of them. I'm going to skip abilities which had no changes compared to the original. Starting off with Ardent Flame. There are no changes to Lava Whip or Searing Strike, or any of its morphs. The first discrepancy we can see is in one of the morphs of Fiery Breath, Engulfing Flames. Instead of describing the increase in flame damage taken, it instead says enemies hit increase damage by X up to a maximum of X. This effect can occur once per second. I said X because reading these values is pointless, as they're basically values taken from the proper descriptions of these skills. Maybe it means Engulfing will do more damage, scaling with how many enemies you've hit, but then the line, this effect can only occur once per second, doesn't make sense because you can't cast it more often anyway. Also, the morph description still talks about increasing flame damage taken. Next we have Fiery Grip. This one gets some nice changes. The change we can already see in the base morph is also inflicts X seconds of X.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused of where these are. So is the top here? The skills deleted preview and Oh, new effect. He has it down here. Okay.
Reduced magic and weapon power.
No,
of the
never
enemy.
mind.
Yeah,
That's
the top
probably
part
a
should be
scuff.
the new effect. The bottom part is the old one.
Bottom's the old one. Top is the new. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Translation of Major Cowardice. Then if you look at morph description of Chains of Devastation, it says they are no longer taunted or weakened, further suggesting that the base morph applies some sort of cowardice. And then it says you gain Major Frenzy and Major Evasion. Now Major Frenzy is most likely just a scuff translation of Major Berserk, but getting Evasion from this ability is something new. Next we have Inferno and its morphs. Cauterize seems unchanged, but Flames of Oblivion seems to now simply deal damage around you every 5 seconds, instead of shooting out fireballs. It also has a line, each hit has an X chance to deal X, but I have no clue what it could be. Also, the morph description here still talks about fireballs, which suggests that they're not all updated, which means the flame damage taken morph description for Engulfing Flames could have also been simply not updated. Standard seems completely unchanged, so let's move on to passives. First of all, we have Combustion, and as you'll see, every passive now has the roleplay text that Arcanist passives also have. So for Combustion, it's Flames are your fuel. Now as for what actually changes, it doesn't talk about increasing the damage of your poison and burning stats effects anymore. It just mentions restoring resources. And it also says it requires an Ardent Flame ability slotted. Warmth seems unchanged, same with Searing Heat, and same with World in Ruin. So let's move on to Draconic Power. The description of Spiked Armor now says, you unleash your inner dragon, increasing your damage dealt by X, and gaining X of increased fire damage to both your physical and magic resistances. I feel like this one gets really fucked up by using values from the old ability. For example, I'm sure it won't be increasing your damage dealt by almost 6k, it's just using the Major Resolve value from the current version of the skill. I'm finding it hard to decipher this one. Now, nothing seems to change in Hardened Armor, but Volatile Armor actually talks about getting some stacking effect. You unleash a fiery mist of spikes around you, dealing damage to enemies hit for 20 seconds, that's old. But you gain stacking damage up to once every X seconds when this effect deals damage. That's new. But again, really hard to tell what's going on about the values. There are no changes for Dark Talons or its morphs, so let's move on to the next one.
You were watching Saturday Frog?
The base morph seems to heal you for an amount and then missing health on top of that. Which is a change because the way it currently works, it simply heals you for missing health. It also states that it scales with your maximum health. Now for Green Dragonblood, it says it heals you for amount, which is increased by X depending on your missing health. And then additionally it has the 5-second hot, which it already has on live. Now Coagulating Blood, now it actually says it heals your allies. You unleash your Draconic Blood, healing you and nearby allies for X of your health for X seconds, plus an additional X of your missing health for up to 20 seconds. Wait, no, that 20 seconds is probably also a placeholder value. Healed targets gain X, which increases their health regeneration by X, and their spell and weapon power by X. So I'm assuming that spell and weapon power is going to be Major Brutality, or maybe Minor Courage. Next we have Protective Scale. It reads, you unfurl your draconic wings to protect yourself, knocking back enemies around you by X and stunning them for X. The winds following your attack circle you, which reduces your projectile damage by a certain amount and grants you a certain amount of stamina, which increases your movement speed by a certain amount. So, in addition to the projectile damage reduction, it now also knocks enemies back and stuns them. And there is also something about stamina and movement speed. I'm not sure if this is some weird translation because it says a certain amount of stamina which increases your movement speed. Like the stamina could be a mistranslated buff. Next, Protective Plate has the same effect as on Alive, as in immunity to snares. And the other morph, which I think now has a straight up different name, unless it's like a really weird mistranslation, says it replaces knockback with a partial.
So it seems like most of what I'm seeing, Luna, does this so I'm having a really hard time following this. I'll just say that, but it looks like mostly the thing I'm keying on is that there's a bunch of things that are being changed so that they're utilized. Like the tank skill line here is being used to provide healing and stuff too. Is that kind of what you're picking up? Más o menos. Yeah, because I'm seeing like, so this granting, party members minor protection, and then we had just before this another one where Coag was let me see, skip back here a little bit.
Yeah.
Coag was
the possible minor courage from coagulation.
Yeah.
Which was very interesting.
And healing nearby allies.
And the fact that it heals the nearby allies is kind of crazy as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's like they're putting some more buffs and utilities in the skills. It's kind of hard to follow because like translations and it clearly misses a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
In the video, so but it's interesting.
We already talked about it. They talked about in hell restoring your missing resources as you breathe in. What's new though is that the Draw Essence morph now also heals you based on missing health, apparently. Now the ultimate, Dragon Leap. The base morph seems unchanged, but Take Flight talks about increasing your damage after the leap. On activation, you're filled with Draconic Fury for a long time, increasing your damage dealt by. Now the other morph no longer knocks enemies back, it knocks them upwards. Personally, I feel like it should be the other way around, because if you want to actually use Take Flight for the damage done buff in PvE, you don't really want to knock any of the enemies back. Now moving on to passives. Iron Skin is unchanged, but it just gains this roleplay text at the top. When Dragons are forced onto the defensive, their skills become as hard as iron, a trait you have adapted, and then it's the same block mitigation passive as we have. Burning Heart seems unchanged, but Elder Dragon has something new. We got the roleplay text, and then when you activate an ability of Draconic Power, you and your party members gain 0 long 323, increasing your weapon power by. Also increases your health regeneration by. So we don't know any values, but it's nice knowing it's going to provide some kind of weapon power to you and your allies. And lastly, in the place of what used to be Scaled Armor, we now have Battle Roar, which was moved from Erdenheart. When you use an ultimate ability, you restore X health, magicka, and stamina for each point of ultimate power spent. The amount of regeneration is multiplied by the number of your Dragonite abilities equipped. So yeah, this is basically Battle Roar from Erdenheart, except it now also scales with the number of DK abilities equipped. So now moving on to Erdenheart, and starting with Stonefist. So Stone Giant seems completely unchanged, but the base morph seems to be back to being a magicka ability, because the morph description of Stone Giant says it becomes a stamina ability. But yeah, going back to
It's a
Stone
healing
Fist,
effect.
you manipulate the earth beneath your feet to create a protective
Okay.
shield and hurl it towards yourself or an ally, granting the target a damage shield that absorbs up to X for X. This ability scales with your maximum magicka or stamina, whichever is higher, and deals a maximum of physical damage equal to the maximum health of the target. I feel like that one is just a wrong translation, or maybe just wrong in the files. It sounds way less nonsensical in one of the morphs. So let's have a look at Obsidian Shard. You manipulate the earth, so basically the same. But what's new is that it now heals the target for an amount equal to its life if it is destroyed. And now the second paragraph says, this ability scales your maximum magicka or stamina, whichever is higher, and is capped at the maximum health of the target, which makes more sense. Molten Weapons seems to have something new. We first have the text about the major brutality and
What up,
sorcery,
Hunter?
which is what we also have on live. But then, while the effect is active, light and heavy attacks deal additional damage, up to once each. And then igneous weapons,
Guys, we're just
increasing
checking out
duration and radius,
some
same as
leaked
on live.
info, and then we're
Metal
gonna get to the
armaments
rest.
additionally grants Empower, so same as on live. So the only addition on all of the versions of this ability seems to be additional damage on light and heavy attacks, with some kind of cooldown. Obsidian Shield seems to have no changes, so we're skipping that one. But Petrify now talks about reducing armor, and the stun doesn't seem to be instant anymore. You encase an enemy in Molten Rock, reducing their movement speed for X, for 4k flame damage for 2.5 seconds. No, yeah, those are just misplaced variables. I should have read it as reducing their movement speed by X for X seconds.
Okay, when the stun starts,
After
should be
X,
healed.
they're stunned for a long time if it is an NPC. This stun cannot be blocked. The Molten Rock burns through the target's armor, afflicting it for a period of time, and reducing its strength. Now, Fossilizes, more description, now says, inflicts minor vulnerability, and extends the duration. Immobilizes the target once the stun ends.
In fact,
And Shattering Rocks says, when the stun ends, the target takes damage and you are healed.
Yeah, Frog says the fact they're considering anything boosting light attacks is good news. IMO. Yeah. Too much information to sink in. Yeah, I agree. It's a little overwhelming. It felt really bad when they removed light attacks from Empower. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I'm seeing more of the same. I'm also seeing some stuff changed up, maybe a little bit for PvP and some stuff to change up a little bit for damage.
So similar to live version. Now Ash Cloud. It looks like both of the morphs are now healing abilities.
There's a very
None of them-
important point in that previous skills, like the stun, the fossilize, it now can be dodged apparently, because there was no mention that you cannot dodge it, just mentioning that you cannot block it. And for PvP, that's a very big thing, because this was the strongest CC in the game, because you couldn't either dodge or block. There are CCs in the game that you cannot block, and CCs in the game that you cannot dodge, but usually not both. This skill was the only one that had both together. That's why it was so strong.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it kind of I didn't see much changing for tanks. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
I mean-
yeah, like the most that we could use is like if we were using like draconic power, we like not in this skill line, not Earthen Heart, but if draconic power now maybe like whenever you heal yourself, you provides minor courage or something to the group, this could be something that tanks would use, because that skill line is still kind of useful to tanks at some extent, and depending on the skill lines available, like this could be something for tanks, but could also be something for healers. I
Yeah.
feel like usually healers have more space, so probably, I don't know.
Yeah, and then Frog's pointing out that Coag heal might be useful for something like Onsol portal situation. Maybe. Who knows? Depending on the values.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of reads to me, and I'm basing this off of like what we know and stuff they've said. It kind of seems to me a little bit what they're trying to do. So for the longest time, for those who don't know, DK healers have been, I mean, for the longest time they were hot garbage. They're now like they're fine. They're okay now. There's actually some really cool skills, but there's no reason to take the rest of the skill line. And so it does seem like they're adding quite a bit to try to. I think you got to remember that it's not just about reality, it's about perception. So and they're going off what the community says. So I did, it was several years ago now, but I did like several videos about Nightblades and Templars and being like, they're actually great tanks. And, the Templars have been so bad for so long that nobody could get it out of their head that Templars weren't garbage tanks anymore. Similarly with Nightblades, Nightblades were never, well, there's probably a time when they were bad, but they were same deal. They had been good, but just nobody wanted one, nobody used one, and so and even when I do like videos, it never really helped. I realized that I had to play them and play them on stream for people to really, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're on a Templar tank," or "Oh, you're on a Nightblade tank," for people to really start to be like, "Oh, I hear they're good now," just telling people it just wasn't having any effect. It was just like I feel like I was just shouting at a wall. And I think that so because of that, I think that even though DKs are not horrible, they've got a couple of useful skills. They did need a lot of love, and it looks like they're giving them a lot of love. And it doesn't look like they're doing much besides minor tweaks because DKs have long been the best tank class. And so that's kind of how this reads to me. And then maybe some modifications on the DPS and PvP side. That's kind of how I'm reading this so far.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, like DK, like you said in the other stream, this will be like the easiest class to do the balance because it's already like one of the most well put, organized class in terms of like thematic and performance. The class is already like very well organized. So they're only doing like some small tweaks on skills that definitely needed. Like there were a bunch of useless morphs in some of those skills, and apparently they are doing something about it, which is very nice.
Yeah. And then the adding of the flavor text, I also kind of roll my eyes about it because it does feel like, oh, if we just tell people that, it's more thematic, they'll believe us, right? Like if we just add some flavor text, that'll change the way. And I think that, hey, it's, I'm Fox Mulder here. I want to believe, I feel like most people want to believe that, stuff is really, is as thematic as you'd like it to be. But it does feel a little bit like,
Yeah, I feel you.
yeah, sometimes I tell my wife, I'm like, I'm cute and you like me and I'm charming. And when I'm being anything but, and just a little gaslighting. All right, we'll
Yeah,
finish this
I
up.
also would wish if they like kind of separate the role play text to the like data information texts and put like a different color or something, just so I could like easily put my eyes on the skill and understand what it does like as quick as possible.
Yeah, 100%. I think that historically their skills have been pretty. They haven't been amazingly well done as far as UI perspective. I think that ZOS is not amazing in that regards. It's really funny. We were talking about UI with last night with we're playing Civilization 7, and I was like, dude, this UI is really bad. What you want in UI, this kind of graphic design too, guys, you want things to bring your eye to a certain place so you know what it is. Another thing that happens is that they'll put like a little thing above where the skill description is that'll say with a X skill from a skill line slotted for a passive. And I always miss those, and I think most people do. Whenever I'm playing it, there's a board game that me and my wife play, Caverna, and you take your pieces and you put a thing on top of them, and for whatever reason, whenever you do that, it adds in a visual noise. We call it like an invisibility cloak because you just lose that piece, you just never see it again, and you got to like that's a board game, that's fine, but like you can't change a board game once it's printed, so whatever. But when you see that in game when you see that in a UI design and you're testing and stuff, what you realize is like, oh, we need to go back and modify that. And that's a level of refinement that ZOS just never does. It seems like they're incapable of. I mean, they're, billion dollar company, but they seem incapable of that level of refinement on most things. I will also point out, just as a side note on that refinement thing, is like they still haven't, they still never and never will, I assume, finished hybridization, right? Like there's still stuff that's still not hybridized. So it's like they're moving on to other stuff while half their homework is undone. But all right, we'll get back into this.
Deals damage like eruption. You nurture a warming ember for X seconds, healing you and your allies in the target area for X once every X. Heal targets in the area gain 1 second of increased health.
Actually, I'm sorry. I want to catch up on these chats because otherwise I won't know what is going on whenever I read them later, and I do want to get to them. Frog says, "Yeah, I made a DK healer years ago for the lulls, and it wasn't amazing." Yeah. They're you know, and I'm forgetting the name of the skill now. Where you cauterize wounds or something like that. Cauterize.
Yeah, cauterize.
Cauterize is actually a really great heal because it will smart target and it heals every 3 seconds. And so it's a burst heal that will smart target 3 people. That it's actually like S tier in a lot of fights because it will the fact that it smart targets, it's not the amount of actual healing it does versus overhealing, which is like someone's at full health and you're healing them, is actually quite amazing. It actually does do a lot in raids, and in dungeons it's even better. So yeah, that's a thing. So they're going to Hunter asks, so they're going to buff all the main skills tonight. They're going back through and redoing all of the class skill lines, Hunter, and they're starting with the Dragon Knight. Yeah. I think there was something about a Templar I thought I saw, but maybe not. Frog says, seems pretty good as long as they don't lean too hard into the sustained minigame because that always feels bad to play. Yeah, we kind of talked about that the other day is basically no game. Like this comes up all the time where no game do you want to like sustain and resources to be something. They keep trying to do this for Dragon Knight and the community keeps telling them that it sucks. They also have tried this. People have mentioned have done this in other games, and it just always sucks. Most people just don't like it. I think I have a few ideas of how that could be done in a cool way. I don't think ZOS is doing it. I think this kind of confirms it, but we can look at it in a second. Oh, here it is. I missed it. It was from Frog. Frog said, oh no, now I'm missing it. Sorry, guys. My chat looks a little bit different than you guys's because it's a little bit more condensed and everything, and sometimes that means that it's a little bit harder for me to see things. Where is it? I know it's here somewhere. Oh, yeah. Frog says, if I recall, Templars were lacking an AoE root in their kit or something like that. They don't really need it. You didn't really need it on most classes. The only thing you needed a root for is like kind of convenience in dungeons. There was really no issue with the Templar for a really long time. Before that, they had all kinds of problems, skills being just way too expensive and the sustain not being good enough, and their source of their sustain was pretty bad. Their source of major resolve was what sucked, and you had to stand still and be inside a circle, and that was pretty rough. They had changed it and it was kind of okay. You could do other stuff. There was, anyways, I don't go too deep into it, but yeah, there was a handful of things. But again, it was literal years, at least a year after they had made changes to where it was fine, it was good, before people even began to consider that maybe it wasn't. So there was a whole year where people were still, and honestly, people kept saying it for years after, that it was bad, and it wasn't. And I did some hard mode stuff just to like show that it wasn't, because that's kind of what it seemed to take. Yeah. Bigfoot is real. They need to add more things to use. Skills should be being more fun. I'm not quite following on that. I was an Argonian DK when Argonian DK wasn't cool. Crude says, I still remember that one infamous patch where ZOS nuked sustain and then dropped Fang Lair with a bunch of sustain sets. It was rough. Yeah, I remember that. All right. We'll finish this up.
Generation and grant ultimate power once every 1.5 seconds. Now I'm assuming the ultimate is going to be minor heroism. One of the morphs says heals significantly more while standing in the area. Minor buffs persist after healing. So yeah, it says the healing effect is increased by 50% if you are standing within it. So I'm assuming it's if you, the healer, are standing inside the area too. And it says the buffs provided by it, whatever they are, persist after exiting the area. The other morph says you gain greater protection, and enemies are slowed in the area, and the ability's cost decreases with higher ranks. Now this might be a stretch, but could greater protection be major protection? I guess we'll see. Magma Shell seems completely unchanged, so let's move on to passives. First we have Rock Armor, which used to be Eternal Mountain, and I suppose it's supposed to replace Scaled Armor, which used to be present in the Draconic Power, but has been replaced by Battle Roar. So yeah, Rock and Stone protect the few who can bear their weight, but you are one of them. Increases your armor by X. Now the value is just copying the value from Eternal Mountain, which was 10% and 20% duration. I don't think it's going to be actually a percentage of armor. It's probably going to be similar to whatever Scaled Armor was, so almost 3k.
They're just moving over some passives.
Replaces Battle Roar, because that one moved to Draconic Power. And Avalanche is something that devs already talked about in their article. If you deal damage, you gain 1 of up to X stacks of X, increasing your damage dealt by X. This effect can occur once every X. Once every X, you lose 1 stack if you have not dealt any damage. Next, Mountain's Blessing reads really weird. When you cast an Earthenheart ability in combat, you gain X seconds of ultimate power. This effect can occur once every X. So I'm not sure, is this still Minor Brutality? Do we still get any ultimate? I'm finding it really hard to decipher this one. Perhaps it doesn't give weapon power anymore, because now DK would grant their teammates weapon power from the new Elder Dragon passive in the Draconic Power skill line. And Overwhelming Power, which used to be Helping Hands, says if you deal damage with a heavy attack at maximum power, which probably means fully charged, this additionally unbalances one target and restores X stamina. So I'm assuming it applies off balance and restores some amount of stamina. I'm assuming it's gonna be more than that. This is just the value from Helping Hands. The latter can only occur once per executed attack. So most likely automatic off balance and some additional stamina from heavy attacking. Sounds okay. And that's pretty much it. Let me know what you think about them in the comments, and please remember that these aren't final things we're supposed to see.
Cool. Luna, do you got any thoughts right off the bat? I know I have a few, but I just want to give you
Some stuff are weird there. Like, definitely there's something wrong and missing, like in the translations. Like, if we don't have the minor brutality, like how like will it balance with the minor sorcery that we have from Templar? We have the minor brutality from DK. If we take it away, it's kind of unbalanced the word, and it's kind of a little weird.
Yeah.
And the wording of some skills were very weird. And this last change of Helping Hands, I don't like it. This could be still useful. I just don't like it.
Yeah.
Like, having stamina, casting skills was much more valuable to me than heavy attacking.
Right. Yeah, it looked like they moved over some passives too, to various skill lines, more or less. Like, we don't know the exact details, but it seemed pretty clear that that's what was happening. Frog says, yeah, she agrees with you on that one. Wish they would make unique group buff for each class. Yeah, that's a great point. A unique group buff, and also finishing hybridization, because we still, like, again, finishing it with some of these buffs, it's kind of left it in a weird spot. I want to talk real quick about, so Frog says, not gonna lie, this whole exercise feels like something that should have already happened as part of the subclassing patch, or even before that. I just want to talk about this real quick. So, guys, they released subclassing, at the anniversary, right? Kind of, they had like this almost a year of like, hey, we've made it 10 years, right? So like year 10 to 11, they're kind of celebrating that. And at that time, the people in charge were different than the people that are in charge now. I will also note that when they did that, so I don't know if I'd be curious how many people are aware of this. Actually, here, I'm going to put up a poll, because that's how curious I am. One moment here. Let me start. Aware of the, hold on, we'll see. I forget here, let me ask Luna, maybe she'll know. Luna, do you remember who the game director was? I forget his name. Is it Matt Ferror? Is that it?
Yeah, could be. I only remember Brian Wheeler, the PvP one, combat one. I think Brian Wheeler is combat or PvP. I don't remember.
Okay, guys. So here's a poll. So there was a podcast that was done on like kind of going over the history of ESO, right, and kind of celebrating 10 years. And they went out and they found somebody who did podcasts and did kind of interview stuff. And so it's like faux interviews. Like they're not. It's not really an interview. I assume they paid this person who had a large audience, and they liked how he did stuff, and and so they did quite a few podcasts, kind of talking about the history of ESO and what it was like doing stuff, and just glazing on themselves, right? Like a self licking, lollipop is 100% what it was. To use a term from my military days, self licking ice cream cone. Yeah, and and they kind of like went through. I want to know. Please respond if you heard of this or knew about it. But a lot of the stuff they were doing, right? So these guys have been working on these games for like a long time. You got to think if you've been working on something for 10 or 15, closer to 20 years, right? You're getting for a lot of people, they're getting towards retirement, right? If this wasn't their first job, and so you know, should they have done all this stuff beforehand? First off, absolutely. And I think that even if like Rich and Matt weren't like on their way out or on their way to different things, they still wouldn't have done the stuff they needed to before releasing it. But they were trying to kind of do like they had like a last hurrah year, right? They did the big party in Europe where it was basically a fucking paid vacation, and then Rich stayed in Europe and tacked on a vacation to this business trip, which honestly is a great idea, but I wouldn't have posted about it on fucking social media. Because it looks bad. It looks really bad when the game is in a bad state, and you're like, "Oh, here I am eating a giant cheeseburger in Belgium. This is so cool," or whatever. And they did all that. Almost certainly, the fact that these guys knew that they were winding down, that they were going to be moving on to other stuff, passing on the game to other people to keep up. Almost certainly that had it like they had a deadline. And so they wanted to get the cool shiny stuff, the stuff that they thought felt really good, into the game before they, fucked off. And so almost certainly that was a factor. I don't know that for sure, but I can't imagine it wasn't. Okay, and so yeah, I'm just curious. They did this whole like podcast thing where they just glaze on themselves. I didn't watch most of it. I watched part of it enough to find out some info because it's my job and I have to do it. Yeah, right now I'm seeing that like 67% of you guys have said no. You don't even know this thing existed. And I just think that is proof that they did this for themselves. Guys, once you make enough money and you have a certain amount of power at a company or in life or whatever, you start doing things that are just you do them because you want it. Like Elon Musk doesn't make decisions because they're good business decisions. Jeff Bezos doesn't make business decisions, because they're good business decisions. They do it because they want to, and they have enough power that they can do whatever the hell they want. And this is honestly just a lesser extent of that, in my humble opinion. So anyways, I just wanted some background on that so you guys kind of know. And then the other thing too that's important is that now the people in charge worked at the company then, almost all of them, which I don't think is a great thing, but these are different people. And so what we see happening here is a turning of the ship to do something different. So understand that like, yes, they should have done it before, but and this is the problem with them not being clear and transparent about this stuff. I mean, it's out there if you want to know, but the fact there's new people in charge, even though some of these people are still there, you can see that hey, they're trying to do something different. Again, the fact that it's almost all the same people, you're going to see that their idea of what is different is still within these narrow confines of what they had already been thinking about and planning about and what have you. So that's part of what's going on. Let me see. Yeah, I never understood suck blasting to the builds. Yeah. Frog says Rich has always been like that. What do you mean exactly, Frog, if you don't mind? Not to put too fine of a point on it. Excuse me. Don't get me wrong. I hope the new folks do better, but I am very skeptical. Yeah, I would agree. Luna, anything to add to that? Probably.
We all are skeptical, but I don't know. I don't like. It's weird. The timing is weird. Like the fact that they are doing this like almost a year after subclassing. It will probably like come to the game a year after subclassing. The timing is very off because there's one big issue with the game. Like, the moment that they put subclassing, people will have to like they had to learn the game again, and this is very inconvenient for some people. Some people hate big changes. I love big changes. I like learning different stuff, but I can get it. It's very like exhausting to learning stuff again. So like, but they should have done it like launched this like at the same time with subclassing, because like even if the changes here are small, some of them may have big implications. Like on you're not using this anymore on builds, and maybe you're now using this on builds. So going through this like in a gradual way, I think it's worse because like people have the feeling they never understand the game. Like whenever they maybe think they understand something about the game changes again and then changes again. Because like I see a lot of mixed opinions about ESO. Like some people like, oh, it needs to be changed. People need to do like they need to fix this. They need to address. They need to make like a full revamp. And at the same time, there are those other players that they like please just stop changing stuff because I want to have something that I can reliably play and learn. People
Yeah.
that are catching up.
And they've gotten
So
feedback.
timings are very important.
Yeah, they've gotten feedback in that direction too. Like before, throughout history, like please stop changing things. It's too much for the average player.
Yeah.
For a lot
I'm
of
happy with the changes. I'm happy they're doing something, but I don't know.
yeah, well, I mean, I think we all agree that this should happen before subclassing. That was kind of my point there, though, is that part of that is, you know, these guys were when you watch some of their public statements, when you watch those, why did they do it 10 years and do like, let's take a look back? These are guys at the end of their career who wanted to have something and kind of pat themselves on the back and said, look what I've done. I've done so great. And this is the kind of funny thing too, is that like Rich will probably always say that. A lot of these guys will probably be like, look what we did with ESO. Like, look how successful it was and what have you. And all of us who actually know and have played the game are like, man, this is a whole bunch of wasted potential. But they're just, again, just patting themselves on the back constantly and being like, oh, we did such a good job. And they spend a bunch of money to have this, podcast done, so that they can have something. And again, basically just, oh, I'm so great. And look what we've done throughout this time as they kind of leave. And so they wanted to have subclassing done so they could be like, yeah, this was the thing that they said was going to be in the game when it launched, but now it's done. Okay, I'm done here. And now I can feel good about moving on with my career and my life and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it absolutely should have been done beforehand, but that's part of the reason it wasn't. And also, I think they had a deadline. They had a time they were aiming for, and then once that was done, they were leaving and moving on with stuff. Yeah, they should have rebalanced all the classes at the same time. It's going to feel bad until then, even if they do a good job. Yeah, I would agree. We'll see here, but I think some of the info about how they're rebalancing classes is honestly not as big of a change as I think many of us are probably hoping for, honestly. I don't know how you feel about that, Luna.
Yeah, but like, do we want a big of a change? Like, do we want anything big? Like, we could fix a bunch of stuff with only like minor tweaks.
Well,
I don't know if we need like a big of a change. Like, I mean, because like then if we do like too much big of changes, like then we fall into that problem of people not having a consistently experience throughout the game.
Yeah, I think that so people don't want to be confused and they don't want to not understand something. And they don't want to have to relearn everything. And so again, good game design is game design that is you pick something and you're like, hey, I want to make an elementalist. And then you make an elementalist and it works really well. That is, people would love that and they wouldn't mind that, even though that would be a big departure from how the game is currently played. Because currently, if you try to make an elementalist, it like you can do it, you can pick skills, but you're really just going off of flavor. None of it has to do like this. It's not going to be incredibly good, and it might be pretty bad if you're not careful. And that's what people don't want. They don't want gameplay that they can't figure out and that is difficult. And if they try to do the thing they want to do, they end up with a garbage build. So I guess my expectations are probably too high. I need to lower my expectations. I mean, that's kind of sad for me to say. But yeah, I guess that's a big part of it. I will say that, looking at these changes and with these skill lines and stuff like that, again, this just seems, I think that they should lean into the elemental damage types, and I think that they should do more damage to various mobs and less damage to others. I think that's one of the things they should have in the game. And what I'm seeing is kind of just like more of the same. They made this sound like they were going to do something. They're adding flavor text. Like that's gonna change things. And if
That's whatever, like 100% whatever.
yeah, if the game mechanics don't support the flavor text, then it's just BS. And that's what I feel like. I feel like they're just, blowing smoke at us personally.
If they put like new effects, new sound design to have something like more crispy, snappy, like the Arcanist is, like the same way they told they could do, then this would be something like thematic wise would be very interesting. But just the flavor text is whatever. We don't know for a fact
Well, they
what
said
they're going to do, but
yeah, they said they're gonna do more sound design, and I don't know about
yeah.
visuals, but they did say they're gonna do that. Okay, so I want to just read maybe for us, just refresh everybody on the long term vision here and kind of some of the stuff that they said they're going to do. So, ESO has evolved tremendously over the last decade as new systems and classes have been introduced, and the bar of the play experience in our design philosophy has been raised. I don't know if that's true. I didn't pick up on this. The bar for the play experience in our design philosophy has been raised. I, Fact check false. I don't know. As part of this project, we have established a holistic, long-term plan for how we aim to modernize ESO's classes and to bring them more in line with one another. It extends beyond addressing identity, balance, and the look and feel in isolation, and it aims to address multiple class issues. Okay, so it extends beyond just the identity, beyond just balance, which they've already failed at these two things, and beyond the look and feel in isolation. Okay, so it beyond those things that they haven't been able to do in the past, and it aims to address multiple class issues. While many of the items in the list below have always been what we strive to accomplish, and that isn't changing, we'll spend more time strengthening ESO's classes and focusing on their guiding principles. Our long-term vision is 1, every class will be viable in any role. They'd already achieved this, had they not?
Definitely, like viable is a very broad word. Like viable is easy. Like anything is viable. You don't even need like classes with the weapon and guilds like system and skill line system. Like viable is easy.
um, Boss says I object. The system doesn't encourage thematic builds in game. Yeah, I agree. For example, Frog says Nightblade talks about stealth, but you never use stealth in PvE combat. 1,000%. That's one of the stupidest things that I saw in here. Oh my God, the corpo speak is unbearable. I know it can be painful, Frog. I'm sorry. bear with us. Yeah, so viable, like this is already true. And again, that they don't know that is kind of weird. And I would say that there are some issues with DPS. And obviously, if you're sticking with just the core classes, it's absolutely horrible. Multi-classing it's just better. That just intrinsically was always going to be true. So I don't know. To us, viability means players can reach their goals with the choices offered. I mean, that also is already true, and I don't think that is at all what players want. You can, and this is something that people used to always give me a hard time about, because I would do stuff and they'd be like, I mean, you can do that on a Nightblade, but like it's easier if you play a DK, and it's like, yeah, but I don't want to play a DK. I want to play a Nightblade, and people would meme on me about it and whatever. It's okay. Thank goodness my feelings aren't easily hurt. But what players actually want is something to be very good. Not a lot of people are going to go out and play a Nightblade single class tank if they find it to be a lot more difficult than doing the same thing on a DK. So this is, again, it's just basically what we're talking about here is that there's a destination that I think we would all like them to arrive at, themselves included, and then we see them pointing in a direction that is not that. And it's like, well, you're never going to get there if you're not even pointed in the right direction. And if you think you're going the right direction, you're so lost you don't even know you're lost. Is a little bit of what is going on here. This does not necessarily mean equally optimal, but always providing multiple choices for you. Yeah, again,
This already happened in the game. Like, there's nothing new. Like, the game is already like that. Like, everything is viable. We can do a bunch, especially because the game's so easy, right? But not optimal. Yeah, that's what already happens. There's nothing
yeah,
new to it.
yeah, yeah. As Frog says, the corpo speak here is like painful. Okay, the second thing they want is for each class to feel cohesive and true to its power fantasy with abilities, animations, and audio effects that reinforce its core identity. Okay, so that's the animations and audio stuff. And also abilities that are cohesive and provide on the power fantasy. So we talked about this last time, but my opinion is that if my Dragon Knight that is a fire-based class does not do extra damage to ice-based creatures, then it will never feel like its identity is being reinforced by its abilities. Disagree with me, if you
I
do.
agree. I agree with what you say. Like, it could be a very logical and cool interaction. But in my experience playing games that heavily do that, it's not good. Like, it doesn't. It's not good because like you create various situations that like, oh, then you must play Dragon Knight on this trial because you have a bunch of like ice opponents, and then you end up like creating like a very meta thing for every type of content. If you have like element bases with element tables with various different percentages of damage like affecting all the elements in the game, it ends up just creating like more meta, more restrictions, less build availables. And this is something like, it's not a cool consequence of a cool concept, I would say.
Yeah. What would you say to something like Sunspire, where you have fire and ice in the same thing? Does that help
um
solve that issue at all?
Maybe, but still, like, let's say you have two skill lines. Like, let's say you have Winter's Embrace and you have like Ardent Flame, kind of to counter both of them, trying to use them more in each situation. You're still like taking away like other elements that are not relevant. Let's say like animals elements, like lightning elements, storm elements, earth elements. They won't be like really a thing, and this will kind of make like the builds on that trial a little more niche than usual. I'm not sure if that's cool. Like, the end, like, I played like Ragnarok Online is the game that I came from, and it's just like that. You have like those element tables, and like, let's say that's this, there's this class. This class doesn't have available like this element. Only these 2 or 3 classes have this element in their kit. So you must have them, or they are the only, or maybe you have this class that have everything available on its kit, and because of that, it's like super overpowered. Because then you can reach like whatever advantages you need. So I think it creates more trouble when you're balancing the game.
That's
But the
interesting.
concept is kind of cool at the same time. So I don't know, maybe have something in between that is relevant but not that, or something limited that you cannot like abuse that much of it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, here's a question for you. What if you have a class that provides a unique buff that no one else provides? Then you're forced
No,
to bring that
that's
class, right? Isn't that
yeah.
kind of the same thing?
Kind of. Like the issue is that you don't want everybody in the group to have the same class. That's the thing. Like, if you put like element tables, and elements are very relevant now in terms of DPS, it will make your builds kind of the same. Everybody will kind of like optimize into that. But if you have like unique buffs for every class, which is something other games do, like Final Fantasy 14 is a very good game in this regard, like World of Warcraft as well, they do that. Like, if every class brings something unique to the table, then this is very good design. Like, we
Yeah.
should have this on ESO. Like, we should.
Yeah, well, we don't. Yeah, we don't have that right now. We have several, only a couple of classes. I want to talk more about that. I want to catch up on chat here, though, because we got a couple of things. So, Frog says, I agree. I do wonder if they would, if that would end up with very samey comps in each trial. I think she's kind of saying, towards both of our points, I suppose. And then Vosswell says, I want to believe I didn't waste 3 hours of my life writing hella paragraphs on that latest survey because a lot of this, ignoring corpo speak, tackles a lot of my issues with class identity. Okay. Um, you, Voss, can you say more about how you feel like this tackles? So first off, Voss, I know many people that have spent many hours of their life trying to write feedback for ZOS, and it's all been ignored. So if they do listen to you, that will be a pleasant change. But if you could talk more about that, so we get like the specifics, I would be really interested to hear that. And then Frog says could be compensated for game design maybe. And then Voss says again, but I'm so scared of getting my hopes up, like how they butchered Battlegrounds. Yeah. And then Tanj here says they really need to fix the game, particularly in skills equivalent diversity. It would be more fun if all DPS doesn't have the same build, especially now with subclassing. Beam has been a staple. Yeah. And it's not just skills. Every DPS is wearing Null Arca. Yeah. And then Frog just very much agrees with Tanji there. Tanji, I'm sorry. Frog, with subclassing, they might make it, quote, every skill line brings a group buff to the table instead of classes. Yeah. I mean, I think we've all said for a long time that, or not, many of us have said for a long time that they should, like each class should have a reason to bring, so that you want to bring one of each class to content. My thought on the various damage types was that it would be I just want it to matter. I don't want it to be a balance thing, but I do want it to matter. Um, Another way of doing that could also be, I mean, this is some of what Dragon Knight had, right? Where they increase X amount of damage for fire, but then you have everybody, oh, well, if we all bring DKs and we all stack a bunch of fire, then we can do more damage and we can burn things down faster. Yeah. Wampus always.
Yeah, I definitely need like a clever way to put this uniqueness on the classes. It's not something easy to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's the last thing that I would expect from them.
I
I think like some people said in the chat, like, and like the classes should play differently. I think that's one of the biggest issues because like everything feels like you play the same, and the bean is actually not a bad example. The bean is a good example of a class that plays very differently from everything else. The bad of it is that everybody plays it, but like in terms of design, is very good. Cause like take two skills like Winter's Revenge, which is the dot AOE dot from Warden, and Eruption from DK. They are the very same skill, just
Yeah.
with a different like elemental type. How do you differentiate like the way the classes play? Like the stealth thing about the Nightblade, they could definitely work more into making stealth something that is relevant. I think this could be a thing. Like it's not. I also wanted to say, like because of the frog comment, we can use stealth on PvE. By the way, guys, this is something that I was talking tonight the other day, and it's actually very fun when you do it properly. Whenever you go stealth on PvE, you can dodge like heavy attacks. So let's say you're soloing like a ward boss or a boss or whatever, and it heavy attacks. If you right time the stealth, you dodge without having like to roll dodge or block or anything. But this is something that is definitely not clear in the game. The windows may be too small. They don't like incentivize you to do that. It's kind of like something.
Are you saying currently
super
you can?
small.
Are you saying currently you can hit Dark Cloak and dodge a heavy attack
Yeah, you can dodge heavy attacks with Dark Cloak. Yeah.
in a trial?
And considering that now it buffs the damage by 10% against monsters, you're not losing DPS by doing that. And you also gain your defense buff, like the major resolve. So it's a very interesting skill, a very interesting concept for solo game. Mainly for a solo game, because like you're probably not
You're
needing
like,
to dodge
hold,
anything.
I'm stuck on this Nightblade thing. Hold on. So you're telling me I can go into Teleria and I can dodge her heavy attacks by hitting Dark Cloak?
Exactly. You can do that. With very good timing, which shouldn't be that hard, but like it should be a little, the game should make it a little easier, but yeah, you can do that. And costs nothing, just the skill.
That's fucking wild. I had no idea that that was actually a thing, Luna. Um,
And they don't say it, they don't mention it in the skill, they provide no information, but that's a very good use of
I
stealth.
I
Like,
bet it's not
this
in.
could be
I
something.
bet it's not intentional. I don't know because it would be in the tooltip or something. I don't know. Maybe not. Huh? That's wild.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't know.
that's
But
interesting.
it works, okay? It definitely does work. And like, since they buff stealth to increase your damage, whenever you use stealth, you go out of stealth, you gain extra damage, and then you can pair this like with vampire and have like even extra damage when you go out of stealth. This is a cool concept for stealth, let's say, playstyle. But the issue is that you don't actually get to feel like you're stealth because like you instantly appears after because the next GCD you're casting something. There's nothing exclusively that you do while you stealth. Like imagine if you have a skill that you can only use while stealth, and then this would make like more sense with the thematic of the class. But what I mean is that they could work into that with the class, and this
Yeah.
could be a thing, could be a fun thing. Like
Yeah.
even for tanks, we can like dodge heavy attacks if you time it right. That's cool.
Wampus, your point is well taken. Tangi, I don't. They don't need AI for this. You can balance all this stuff. It's actually relatively basic math. It's a lot of math, but it's basic math. Um, and they actually have generally done that, and they've actually done it into an incredibly great degree. What you see in the game and the lack, what you might feel like is lack of balance, is actually completely intentional. They have shown us, and because they have the math, they have the formulas, right? So they can do the math on this. They already have it. It's already done. They just got to plug in new numbers, and they have actually fine tweaked, like the Arcanist Beam, doing more damage than all the other classes and all the other setups and stuff like that for the longest time. That was all incredibly fine tuned, and they were very happy with it. I can tell you that unequivocally and as a fact. I know this to be true. I have spent enough time with all this stuff that I have seen them and I have seen their comments on what we have reported, and they're like, we're happy with where it's at. When they have finally answered very specific questions from people. So when you see things in ESO that aren't balanced and maybe aren't you don't like it, just realize that most of the time that is Zaw saying we actually like this and this is exactly what we want to do, and it's not. So I'm sorry, that's probably bad news to hear about, but that is the case. One thing I will say about the damage types, because I'm still on this page. I think that so if you had a fire, if you're running a Dragon Knight, and this is like redesigning content, they're never going to do this or whatever. But one of the ways that you could go about it is that if you're on an Ice Dragon and you have somebody who can do fire, if they can modify the mechanics, so if they can make the ice tombs easier, if they could damage the ice tombs or any number of other things, if you could change them and vice versa with, fire and ice, or it doesn't really matter, poison and something else. That could also be a way where a class or a damage type would offer a unique buff, but you don't need to have everybody in the group running that too. So if it could modify the mechanics, maybe, if you want to talk about being optimal for most raid groups, an easy way to do that is if it takes less time so that you can get through the fight quicker, then it will be like, oh, well, it's the same thing as having a unique buff for a class. And then it feels like, my class and what I'm bringing to the table is doing something. I feel like I'm fulfilling my class fantasy then. But if you just tell me that I'm doing fire, but my fire damage doesn't matter, it's the same as lightning damage, then it's just flavor. And again, the game mechanics don't show. What do you think about that kind of thing, Luna?
Yeah, yeah. Like this that you mentioned, like you have unique interactions that you can make to make the fight easier somehow. That's very cool. It's sad that they will never do anything like that because this will
Yeah.
require like redesigning the entire game. Like this is not going to happen definitely, but it's a very cool concept.
Well, and it's
And
something
yeah,
they
it
could
would
do.
bring more uniqueness.
I mean, it's something they could also do moving forward, right? They could just leave the old content and then move forward
Yeah,
with
yeah.
stuff too.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
possible. That's cool. But one thing that is a little annoying, like if you think about that, about the elements in the game, what did they do to try to put something unique about the elements? They put the elemental statuses, like the burning, the chill, the concussion, but at the same time they put it they also trivialize it like to a point that it's irrelevant. Like everybody does all the status effects at the same time. Like a tank, you do Alice's, you have the three status effect already, and that's super powerful. Like you have, it's so easy for you to have everything. But I remember like thinking about, oh, minor vulnerability. This could be hard to keep in the boss, but oh, don't worry. We have like an sorcerer in our group. Like this already happened. People already say this to me, and in that time it actually worked. We have an MK Sork in the group. MK Sorks, they're doing lightning damage. They're doing a lot of stuff. They constantly proccing like the concussion effect. So you don't need to worry. Like this uptime will be covered.
Yeah.
And this is an example of something that could work, but in the reality, you don't actually need them to do that. But like, if every class would bring something, like imagine you need a DPS, like a brittle then DPS, because that would be the best way to get brittle, AoE
Yeah.
brittle, easy
Fuck
brittle
yeah.
everywhere. Imagine if you have to have one of them. This would be so cool, but you don't. Like,
And the
you
church
really
said
don't.
amen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Vosspa
I would
says,
love it. I would love it.
damn, she's kind of cooking for real though. Yeah, exactly. And guys, go ahead and drop your comments. I mean, I won't. I'm reading all of them, just FYI. So I'm not responding to all of them, but I don't think all of them need to. But yeah, drop them in there. Yeah, don't worry about it blowing up chat or whatever. It's all good. It's good for the algorithm. Keep chatting. No. Another thing that I want to talk about. So this is again game design, guys. This is as old. If you guys are familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, game that came out in I think the late 70s, and then different iterations in the early 80s. One of the things that's happened with Dungeons and Dragons, so original class design in Dungeons and Dragons, if you played a paladin, paladins were hard to play. You had to roll these really high stats, and then you were required to put. You have 6 stats, and you were required to put your highest stat. You had to at least have a 17 in charisma, and there was a bunch of other requirements. It became where like most of the time when you rolled your stats randomly, you couldn't even choose to be a paladin. And then if you did choose to be a paladin, there were all these serious requirements. One of the things was you couldn't retreat unless you were outnumbered like 2 to 1. But a dragon is considered 1. So if a giant elder dragon is attacking you, the paladin can't retreat. They have to stay and die, right? And the same with the various other classes. They all had these very like flavorful, like, hey, here's what a rogue can do, and a rogue is the only one who can do this, pickpocket thing, and so on and so forth. And the modern D&D, and this has happened with a lot of stuff, is all the classes are kind of the same, but just with slight changes. And what will happen whenever you pick a very flavorful game that like, hey, this is what this thing does, you will constantly get feedback saying, I don't like the way X thing plays. And those people will also continue to play your game because it's actually great game design. When the classes don't have it, so it's an argument of like, oh, I don't like the paladin in this case because, these requirements or these specifics. Well, if you take that away from all of the classes, then you basically have all the classes with very little and very shallow differences in between them. And I'm using this as an example because this applies to all games all the time. This is one of the things that the folks over at Helldivers, Arrowhead, and you can disagree with pithy statements or whatever, but there's still truth here where they said, a game for everyone is a game for no one. In other words, that what turns out, while players will continue to like say, hey, we don't like this, we want it to be, not as pigeonholed or not as however you want to say it. In reality, that's actually what we do want. If you're playing a game where there's multiple factions and all the factions are the same, you might as well not have any factions, right? You want them to be materially different so that there is something substantial. This happens in Civilization, that series. I want to play a particular, civilization that has flavor and the mechanics support that flavor. And so you'll constantly get feedback, and it's a design trap to fall into the trap that everything should be the same. So I think what we're all saying, and this is unfortunately one of the things that they're saying it here, but I don't think they're actually following through, is that the classes need to feel materially different. Like you mentioned the beam, Luna, like the beam makes the class feel materially different. And so that is actually a good thing, despite its other
Yeah.
issues. Yeah.
Exactly. No, the Bing is a very good example of very good like design, and it's cool because it's approachable. It makes easier for other people to play the class because it's not super complex. It's a different play style from the regular weaving that was like equal on all the classes, and this is not something cool either because like if you don't like weaving in this game, like oh my god, you're cooked. Like before Arcanist, you had no other option. And a lot of people have issues with the combat of this game because it requires like the same very pattern weaving timing. And if only they could like make variations of how you play with every class, it would probably like suit much more like tastes, like different tastes, like in place house for people.
Yeah. And well, and they're going to say here, and we'll try to hurry up here to speed through. I'm sorry, I'm sure I'm being long winded here, but they will say what their parameters are that they're trying to make things different on, and I think it's a huge mistake, but we'll talk about it. I just want to address them real quick. Tangi, you said, that's sad, I missed your explanation, but why would they intentionally create an imbalance? I didn't actually explain it, Tangi, but the reason that they would intentionally create an imbalance is because they were trying to sell the new class. They were trying to sell the new DLC. End of story, full stop. That is why, man. There might be other reasons, but that is 100% why. They wanted the beam to be better than everything else, so that and sometimes developers do this for good reasons, not because they're trying to sell something, but because they want people to try something. Because and sometimes they want to do that so they can get data on it. Like, hey, we made some changes, but nobody's using this ability because it's not good enough that it's hyped. Let's make it so good that we get it hyped. Then let's draw the power down to where we think it's still good, interesting, but now at least people will be friggin' trying it because we'll just play the same thing, and then we can get data on how it's balanced against other things. You see that in Helldivers is a classic example of that. I don't know if they do that intentionally, but that's absolutely something you can and would do intentionally as a game developer. So there are more than one reason. Also, well, yeah. And never attribute malice to something where stupidity can fully explain it, right? Okay. We want each class cohesive, true power fantasy with abilities, animations. Okay, maybe we went through all that. This means refreshing and modernizing abilities so they look and feel as impactful as those of more recently introduced classes like the Arcanist. That's good. We're committed to evolving our design philosophy by using player feedback and in-game data to help guide class updates. I mean, they've just said this so many times that it doesn't mean anything anymore, but maybe this time it'll be different. Maybe it will. As we address balance concerns and update class mechanics, our goal is to ensure that every class feels good to play, both mechanically and thematically, while keeping a unique flavor that sets each apart. Again, I don't think there is much flavor that sets most of the classes apart in general. I think your point about like having a brittled end because that's their just as a for instance because that's what they bring to the table and they're the best source of brittle would be cool if they could do that and also do good damage and stuff like that. So for the refresh of ESO's classes, our primary goal is to support the long-term vision we laid out. Our strengthen the unique identity of each class, making them feel fun, rewarding, as well as thematically unique and engaging to play. Improve balance between pure subclassing and subclassing, so both paths have their place in the game. Make each class skill line more varied and distinct for what they offer a role so that each skill line holds something valuable regardless of what you play. This could be cool if they actually added the unique, I think someone said this in chat too a minute ago, where if they actually added a unique buff to each class or each class skill line kind of thing, that could make for some wildly interesting, cool play there. Use both in-game data and player feedback to help inform our decisions, ensuring changes reflect player experience and preferences. I will say too that this unique thing everyone having to bring, they've constantly every time they make things unique, they have in the past they've gone exactly 100% against this with trying to make it where like you don't have to bring anything. And that kind of seems like it was their philosophy at the time, but that maybe that's changed. Address power outliers and abilities and skill lines, and look at balance concerns as we progress through each of the classes. Prioritizing mathematical and functional changes before visual and audio updates. I mean, that's how you have to. That you don't want to design the visual and audio and then decide the mechanics don't work and have to change it. So Yeah, this is just like, I think it's like an internal document that they modified for us to
Yeah.
read. Um, and then they have here our class identities, which is I think where we can hang out for a bit and talk about it here. Yeah, I I don't know. I hesitate with some of this stuff. Actually, they didn't get to the. Maybe they say it further down because there's something I want to talk about here a bit. So they talk about, maybe it was above this. Oh, here we go. Here's some examples of changes. Maybe. Yeah, Dragon Knights or attrition warriors. Sorry, I'm just double checking. Yeah, there will be many adjustments that help reforge this experience, including unique damage over time parameters. Okay, so they're going with damage over time, like shorter durations, higher damage per tick, and ramping effects that let them build their power over the course of a fight. Another area is this is improved is with the new avalanche passives to Earth and Hearts, which allows you to slowly build up momentum with a stacking damage bonus while in combat that can be lost if you fail to keep up the pressure. So they said this somewhere else, and I actually don't. Oh, sorry, I actually don't know where it's at. Um, but they were talking about more about the various damage types and how they wanted to separate classes by like direct damage, area effect damage, damage over time, and stuff like that. I think that the core problem with the Arcanist, with the Arcanist Beam, is that it is a button that you hit and then you don't have to do anything for 4.5 seconds. This is, literally 3 times as long as the next longest channeled skill, which is a heavy attack at 1.8. So it lasts 3 times as long. You hit one button and you don't do anything for 3 times as long as any other skill in the game. It does it is your primary core damaging ability, so it does the most damage out of all of your abilities. So you want to do it as much as often as you can. It does AoE damage in a gigantic area. And I think those 3 things make it where, how do you balance that with a single target ability? And I think they're putting themselves in the same situation they've been in before, where they try and balance, if you're going to say, oh, this class is more single target damage, or this class is more direct damage, and this class is a damage over time, I think that those things are nearly impossible to balance. And I don't think that that is how they should be balanced, personally. What do you think about that, Luna?
Yeah, yeah. Because I don't know if this will be cool for players. Like people want to have like more options of types of damage in the same character, ideally. But maybe like the game already offers a lot of options. Like there's another thing that we have to mention. Like all those heavily thematic things, like oh this class is more this, more that. We cannot forget this game. Like a lot of times, like half of your skills doesn't come from your class, and like it won't change regardless of what you do. Like
Yeah.
for the class thematic design or something, it won't change. So you cannot like go 100% into only one thing because everybody will have wall of elements or stampedes and like all those skills that everybody already have, like that probably takes like half of their skills or something, like depends on the role, of course. So like even if they want to focus so much, it kind of doesn't work in the game that they have. Like for the beam, like my opinion, I would just like to point, like to put this, is like it's a very easy thing to balance. Like it's impossible, like with the damage it has, with the area, with the how easy it is, like just press one button. But that's just one very simple adjustment like that you could do in this skill that like makes it that much easier. Like you just limit the damage, you nerf it. Whenever you hit more than one target, it reduces the maximum damage it does, like by like 10%, to a maximum of like you only do like up to your like 70% of your maximum damage. Like if you have like let's say 3 or more targets, like every target that you hit, like you lose 10% of your damage. Like because in this way, okay, you still will be the top cleave damage. You still have like all that cleave, but you cannot be like top single target at the same time. Like and it can be that far. Like this is the first thing. 'Cause, like how far it is from everything else that does AoE damage, that's kind of crazy. Okay, that's kind of crazy. So we need to do some adjustments in this regard. And it's like you said, like it cannot do like top single target damage. It's too close. Like I know it doesn't do top single target damage, but it's too close. Oh my
Yeah,
god, it's too close.
it's less than 10% generally, is I think usually
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
number.
exactly,
I could be
exactly.
wrong on that number, but I think that's about right. Yeah, that's interesting. So you're saying if it's hitting more than one target, reduce the damage significantly. I mean, I could get.
Yeah, yeah, this needed to be like I think this is just something realistic with the damage that they have right now. They need to do that. Like if they nerf it to a point, like let's say like they just like flat nerf it like by 20% damage, then we wouldn't care that much with it because like it doesn't make that big of a difference. Like because the single target damage will be already like so much lower than the other classes that this wouldn't be too much of a thing.
I
But and we also should think like, should Arcanists only play Bean in every situation? Like, should we always choose to play Bean if we're playing Arcanist?
I
Like,
mean,
this should be like the only playstyle available.
even if the damage scales down to 70%, I mean, I even if it goes down to 50%, if it's smart, if it like smartly changes its damage, why would I use anything else? That's still to me,
Yeah,
to the average player. So I get in the extreme high end, you're gonna care because you can get more damage out of some single target build. But why would the overwhelming majority of people not still just use beam in that situation? And I'll add one more to
yeah.
that too.
It's too easy. It's still too easy, right?
It,
Like comparably, it's still too easy
I don't know
to
how
do
you
this kind of
balance
damage.
a core ability that is a gigantic AOE versus something that's single target. I don't think it's possible. Um, well, I say that we should brainstorm it because you know what, saying something's not possible is really just a failure of imagination. But this seems at the minimum incredibly difficult. Another issue is if because this happened with me with a necro right back in the day. Necros were like damage over time for a long time there, and now they're kind of changing that up. But if I have a damage over time a class, and then I have a direct damage class, Necro versus Nightblade, for example, if I'm running around Overland, that damage over time class is garbage because I can instantly kill most things on my Nightblade. I can bow proc and one shot stuff Overland. So why am I going to play the Necro just running around Overland is going to feel like garbage compared to a Nightblade where I can kill things in three
Oh yeah.
GCDs and 3 seconds because I can do three direct damage attacks versus the Necro where I spend three GCDs and then I wait 15 seconds for it to eventually die. You know what I'm saying?
The issues with with the dot design. The dot design in this game is wrong. Like you shouldn't have like 5 or 6 dots in your build that last 20 seconds. Like this is a very big issue. Like there should be skills with lower timing dots that are more relevant. Because like just getting your example, yeah, why would you cast like a dot or whatever if you can like cast three just direct skills? We
Right.
have a good example, like the Burning Talons from DK. The Burning Talon is a very short dot and it's very decently strong. It also has some direct damage, and this is a skill that is meaningful to use even in Overland, like even against like easy mobs. And
So,
they should definitely design like dot classes around like lower duration dots. Like the dot system is weird in this game.
well, how would so? Yeah, I think my contention, okay, my contention is that trying to balance classes around some of them being direct damage, some of them being damage over time, some of them being AoE, some of them being single target is intrinsically problematic. And while
Yeah.
perhaps there can be a way, I don't think there. I'm just going to say there's not a practical way. I'd like to believe that that's wrong. I would love for us to investigate that that's wrong, but that is my contention that they're never going to be able to balance based on those parameters. Because again, if you have an ability that is AOE hitting several targets compared to one that's only hitting one, the ability that is hitting multiple targets is always going to be superior. And so the class that has the AoE abilities is always going to be superior to the one that's only targeting a single person. And that's what they're saying. They want to balance around this. And I'm saying that's not possible. And it sounds like you maybe disagree with me, or maybe not me specifically, but you disagree with this idea. I would love to hear, like, show me that I'm wrong is kind of what I'm at. I know that's a lot of pressure, but I'm just like, that is kind of what I'm asking because I don't think that's possible. And I think that their whole method of going about this, like their design parameters, are wrong. That's my argument.
Yeah, in my opinion, you cannot go full like in one type with one class. This doesn't make sense. You have 3 skill lines. You have a bunch of stuff inside each class, so it
But
doesn't make
that's what,
sense to go like full
yeah.
on damage all the time or full on
So you
direct
don't
damage.
think they should do that? But I think they're
No.
literally saying that that's what they want to do with this. I mean, they're saying that like the DK, they want the damage to ramp up over time and have this effect that you need to keep on a mob or keep going, and you don't want it to drop or your damage will go down. This is going to be intrinsically worse than a Nightblade for many fights where you can just burn through things quickly. Would you know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah,
so you're
that's
saying
objectively true what you're saying. Like there's nothing to say about it. Like, but
yeah.
there's also something weird that we have to consider. Like we're talking as the game was pure class, and that's not the case. So
Sure.
it only makes it even weirder, honestly. Like,
Well,
this entire talk.
and what they said they're trying to do because of the overwhelming feedback from the community is they are trying to make it where a single class is better now. And again, they're talking about viability, but
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it really isn't about viability for most players. I just want to make that also abundantly clear. People say that, and they don't mean it, because all of this stuff, it's single classes are already viable, but they're so far behind that it feels bad. If you watch your buddy like solo something, and you see how quickly, because they got to the fight before you, and it took them 15 seconds, and when you're there helping them the whole time it takes 12 seconds. You're like, oh, so I'm doing three, I'm cutting 3 seconds off that. It feels horrible. It feels bad. And so most people don't that's not actually what the issue is. So yeah. So again, my contention, it sounds like you just agree with me. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
that
definitely.
them trying to balance around these various, that's why I think they should balance around something else. And it's totally fine to have, like you said, have some unique Dragonite abilities where they do, like they're saying down here, but it really seems to me like they're leaning more into making, oh, this is the direct damage class. This is the, this is the, again, beam class. This is the jabs class for the Templar. This is the
Yeah.
dot class. Also with sustain problems for the DK. Like, fuck you, DKs, is what it feels like.
Yeah, that's weird.
Frox is correct. This needs to be approached not from the perspective of viability nor perfect balance, more like tolerances are in engineering. Yeah. Yeah. The classes needs to be within a certain band of difference from each other. Yeah. And also with, with the single target skills and stuff like that. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So I don't know. Do we have anything else to say? I think maybe we're good to move on, and maybe if you're still up for it, and talk about how we might change some of this.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
The image is fun at least.
right. So we'll try to stick with just the Dragonite, and we'll kind of maybe move through. I think we'll probably talk about some of the other ones with kind of moving through this. So I like the change. So I like with the changes how they're making. It seems like a lot of what they're doing is making Dragonites where they can actually heal in a way that isn't completely garbage, providing some buffs and stuff like that. I think that we all, I actually think that we all agree on this. Agree that each class should have a unique buff, which is kind of wild that we all agree on that. Do we all? I'm going to put up a poll on that. Where do you kind of see though? What do you want to see out of the Dragonite, Luna?
Oh, like this change on the coagulating blood is definitely the most interesting thing that I saw, especially because like we have to consider even after scribing, for example. Like I'm providing like now a PvP perspective into this matter. After scribing, the healing soul with major vitality and regaining resources, like this is so broken compared to any other heal. Like there are some heals that are comparable, but they definitely need something else because like scribing has this heal that is so strong, like for single target. Like this is a very good example of a very good adjustment because now you're providing an extra buff. You can also heal your friends. Like coagulating instantly like becomes a very relevant skill. I'm happy with that. Like and putting some more and feels like they put some more unique buffs on DK. Because like even if they're putting like on, even if it was only the minor courage, we're assuming okay minor courage on the coagulating blood, this would be already a very good thing because we don't have currently like very good sources that are available. Like
Yeah.
minor courage, we have sources available for that, of course. We have banner, we have like scribing skills, but none of those options they are very cool to use. Like they're not great. And this should probably be something that a healer could access to make it easier and more fun for them. So this is definitely a good direction of a change.
Wampa says roll back to a ESO 2018 image back up and go from there. That's funny. What I don't remember. I was playing back then Wampus, but I've never played a ton of DK. What specific on that 2018 image makes you think this is perfect for the DK? Frog says my DK healer concept was Daedric Cauterize, so I think you could kind of justify it. Interesting. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. I think we all also agree that like PvP should be split up from PvE. Is that also a thing that we
Definitely.
largely all agree on? Okay.
Both communities are screaming for that. Like the PvP and the PvE community, both of them are screaming for that.
Yeah, I've said this before, guys. The reason they don't do that is because they essentially double the work that they need to do. But it's like if but that's how they view it. But really, what they're doing is breaking up an impossible problem into two different possible chunks, which is literally something you do in engineering and mathematics all the time. You might look at a problem as a whole and be like, yeah, there's no way of solving this. But if you break it up to its constituent parts, you can be like, no, actually, we can't solve this part, and then we can't solve that other part, and then we can put it back together, and we can get an answer to something. There's many ways of solving quote unquote impossible problems to a degree that is satisfactory, if not exact as well. There's plenty of approximation methods and stuff like that, and I think that that is a little bit of what we'd like to see. I think as far as what individual, so we're in, as Frog said, we're officially in like the dreaming stage here. What like unique buffs would you like to see from thematically, like what from the Dragon Knight? What speaks to you?
If they want this thing of like dot damage for Dragon Knight, which just to be clear, I don't think this is a good idea. Like I don't agree. I never felt like DK was like oh dot damage class. I think that much more for Necromancer, honestly, like thematic for me. I know burning is usually something dot related, but it could be other stuff like empowering yourself, like and other stuff. It doesn't need to be like dot class. Dot class is usually like class with a bunch of curses and different dots and a lot of different stuff happening at the same time, which is almost always the like warlock or necromancer or whatever, and not usually the fire class. Fire class, there's a lot about burst damage, and even the DK. What I think that is very like
Hmm.
the unique thing about the DK when I was learning the class and understanding is that it was always a split of direct and dot damage. Like if you got the damage, like if you read CMX or anything, it's usually a class that is very like half to half, dot damage and direct damage, because all the skills had direct damage on activation and dot at the same time. So it doesn't
Right.
make sense for me to go full on dot. Like for me, this is already like not the thematic of the class in my opinion. But if you want to do that, you could like increase the vulnerability to dot damage with a debuff that you put whenever like if you whenever you set the enemy burning, let's say, it's more vulnerable to damage over time abilities or whatever. This will already be something that works.
Yeah, I think for me, I would like to see like that, protection, major protection. So the Earth and Heart skill line for to me really strikes me as something that should potentially, if you were looking for drawbacks, then I would say mobility should be core there, but there should be a lot of
Definitely.
survivability. So shields, in that you're turning skin to earth, or making a crusty earth on the outside or whatever. Also with protection and other ways of reducing damage and stuff like that. That really strikes me. The fire stuff as well. I could actually see something that could be cool. So with like cauterize, or that not the skill, but the idea, the concept of a cauterize is like you've taken a bunch of damage and now we're gonna burn it so you stop bleeding to death. I could see it like an oh shit type heal where like you put a buff on somebody and if they drop down to a certain point, it heals them or stops damage or does something. I think that could be really cool thematically for a
Like
heal.
the Arcanist heal, pretty much.
Yeah, honestly, exactly like that. I was thinking about that as I said it. It's like the shielding, that's Arcanist, the but doing it for your allies, not just yourself necessarily too. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and you could use some of this stuff for tank. Like you could have a tanking version of most of this stuff that just applied to you, and that would be fine. And then, of course, you also have to then therefore balance that for DPS and more importantly, PvP, which again, as we've all kind of addressed, is seems to be a nearly impossible task. I put up this poll. Would you like to see each class have a unique buff? By the way, and so far it's 100% yes. Everybody says yes. I mean, fire for dot, explosive for direct damage. Yeah, Frog, I would agree with that. Yeah. So those are a handful of things. I'm with you. Like, yeah, for damage on the DPS, having some direct damage, then some damage over time. This idea of having to feed the fire to keep it going, to keep damage going. I think it's. I don't think it's good. I think it's dumb. I think that, but I think one way that could be really interesting to do this would be if essentially you have skills that will actively, and it sounds like maybe there's a slim chance that this is what they're trying to do, but if you had skills that you wanted in your rotation anyways, but you had to cast them in order to be able to sustain your other skills, I think that would be really cool. And I think that, you know, one way to do that would be a unique resource. Again, like the Arcanist has Crux, could be a way to go, but you could also have it where it looks like what they were talking about doing, where some skill, I think Inhale is what it was, would give you back resources. Any thoughts on that, Luna?
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. That's interesting. I have no issues like on, and this is something I think the game needs. Okay, because I'm trying to come from a point like of somebody that doesn't play ESO. It's not cool that the way that DPS works on ESO for most people, because the way that DPS works is that you have no dynamic. There's no dynamic on DPS. You're just like burning everything. It's almost like all the classes in game are like DPS, like focused on damage over time. Like that's the truth. All classes are focusing on damage over time. And you don't feel whenever like you don't see burst windows, you don't feel different stuff. Your rotation is always like perfectly keeping all of your 10 damage skills going so it works, and there's no mechanic skill that you have to cast or anything. It's all like 10 damage skills that maybe they are above at the same time they're also a damage. So this should definitely be an interesting thing, like something that you have to press in order to keep up your rotation, and your rotation like will line up with like, oh, I'm full of resources now, I use this skill, now I have a greater window, oh, I timed this skill right before like during this vulnerability, so I'll be like on my uptime, on my good uptime to do damage. Like
Yeah.
this brings more complexity and dynamic to the fight, and I think this is interesting. And they can also keep this concept of like keeping the fire as long as you are the fire, because then you cast something to yourself in
Oh
this
yeah.
sense, like you're keeping your inner fire or something, like a meter or something, a mechanic that like makes you burst fire and become stronger as you do stuff, and you have resources skills to use in the middle of it, like to keep with that. Then you're creating like a mechanic, a class that is more dynamic and have unique mechanics.
Yeah, so it sounds like your approach It sounds like first off, you really like the idea of like some damage windows as one way. It sounds like you would also like to see some sort of unique class mechanic. Am I correct
Yeah, yeah,
in
for sure,
reading that?
for sure.
And then it also sounds like, oh, maybe I'm losing my train of thought here. Um, it also sounds well. It also sounds like, I mean, how would you do that without? Are you thinking cooldowns, abilities with cooldowns, which is something ESO does not do at all?
Yeah, it showed us kind of a way of running, like of going around cooldowns. Like it's not worth to press it that soon. Like maybe they should just accept that sometimes you have cooldowns for some very specific skills. This wouldn't be a big deal if those are like very specific skills. But there are ways to work,
Well,
like even the way that they're doing. Like if you have an uptime of something and this like gives like 8 seconds, this kind of becomes like the cooldown of the skill pretty much.
well,
Well, another point that I would like to add, like you shouldn't be slotting 10 DPS skills when you're playing. You should have skills that do something for your other skills, not only DPS, not only damage value. You should have more dynamic on the skills.
not just the same because yeah, it does make all the classes the same. That's actually it's interesting because it is one of those things with ESO. Is like once you learn how to do a 10 button rotation, plus your ultimates, all the classes are the same. Like they play the same. You can switch classes and it's not
Exactly.
really a big deal to switch between them. Nightblade was the one that used to be the most different because you would have a little bit of those damage windows. You would have to use your bow proc. And so it was a little bit different. And then crows having certain classes, actually crows and wardens having a semi spammable, but that's about as much different as they got. I will also point out that as I think about this, ESO did have and does have currently in the game damage windows. They're so poorly done and so poorly utilized, it's off balance. It used to, off balance. What is the concept of you can set, at least for trial bosses, you can set them off balance, but then they have an immunity window where you cannot set them off balance. But it's such a small amount of damage, is the first thing. There's no way that the game does not communicate that the enemy is off balance to you, and that is still true, except through text or add-ons or trying to. I mean, the way the game
That's
tries,
crazy. Yeah.
yeah, the visuals on it, like what are you gonna if you're on console and you're looking at the in game, like it gives you a row of like 100 buffs and debuffs going out, and you got to find the one you're looking for. I know that console players are able to do that to some extent, but it's fucking crazy. It's a stupid design, and so there is something like that, but it's already so poorly utilized that it's like it's kind of garbage. So it doesn't exist. If I can, I want to.
But the issue, like off balance, is something good in that direction. But the issue is that your damage in your rotation ESO is the same pretty much all the time. Like you may have an execute phase, okay, then maybe change the button that you're pressing, and that's the only thing present in the game. Your damage is the constant thing. It is a constant number. Your DPS barely change. If you do a parse, your DPS barely change along the entire parse. Like, of course, you get some damage because of like bloodthirsty traits and probably execute phase, but your damage is super consistent in this game. And this is not a fun way to play because you don't see the impact of the stuff that you do. Like having one or two or three classes that have like constant damage, like this is the kind of thing that a damage over time class does. It has a very consistent damage that constantly burns the opponent as long as you do very well your rotation. Like, this is the concept. The issue is that ESO only has this concept. Like, it lacks impact. Like, because I have a friend that likes a lot playing DPS on games, and he likes playing burst classes. For this reason, he's not never playing ESO because there's nothing you can do.
Well, I
Like,
also think you have to design the encounters then to take advantage of that. Would you agree?
for sure,
If
for
you have
sure,
if you
for
have
sure.
if you have, for example, a portal mechanic where someone needs to go in there and do a great deal of damage in a short period of time, and then you have another mechanic, and you could reverse that or whatever, where you're just trying to burn someone down, and the person who's doing the dot damage maybe does the most damage over the longest period of time. But if you sent them down in the portal, they literally can't do enough damage to complete that objective in a short period of time.
Yeah,
Something,
that's cool. That
yeah.
sounds cool. That sounds cool. And this creates imbalance, of course, but this is fun.
What up,
imbalance.
Nani?
This is something that I feel like we need a little bit. Like
Yeah.
this class or this build a little better in this encounter or in this portal or in this boss, and you have to mix them like to take the most advantage out of the game. Like this is good imbalance. Classes shouldn't hit the same. It shouldn't feel the same. It
Yeah.
shouldn't do damage the same way.
Well, and they compare it to the Arcanist. They compare stuff to the Arcanist. Again, the Arcanist does have this unique class mechanic that nobody else has with Crux, and I think we were all kind of saying, or at least me and you and I are saying, and I think most people would probably agree, is that like lean even more into that almost, but we don't
Yeah.
have that. If they really want to bring these things into line with the Arcanist, they would need to add a unique class mechanic to all of them. I will also point out that the design constraints on this is this makes it. I think this would be a great idea. This makes it even more complicated with multi-classing because what we already have with the Arcanist, for example, if you're playing an Arcanist healer, you no longer need or care about consuming Crux. You only care about generating Crux, and I mean that's I guess fine. Um, if you're multi-classing and then you are picking another class, maybe you have some other mechanic that you're concerned about. But if it's a lot to pack a full class mechanic into each skill line that can then be grabbed and put into some other class or other group of skill lines.
Yeah.
I think that could make for some incredible gameplay and could be really engaging. It is also, again, we already talked about how monumental of a task it is to rebalance all these class skill lines together. I think it makes that even more monumental. And again, by all accounts, it is beyond the capacity of ZOS to do based on past performance. But hey, we're always hopeful for the future. I want to catch up on these comments if you don't mind, real quick, Luna. I'll try to be
Sure,
brief.
sure.
Yeah, so this is from like forever ago, I know, but Frog said, uh, like break in regards to breaking things up and solving smaller problems, that we do that all the time in engineering. Like we do it every day, and they should have figured that out years ago. And that's in regards to separating PVE and PvP. Volspaw said, I just thought this was funny. You're making sense. We don't do that here. Wampus, maybe a better percenting on burn. Okay, never mind. I think you said that. Wampa said you read his mind. I mean the fire for dot, explosive for direct. Yeah, we talked about that. Also, maybe crank up the passives if they are full DK classes. Yeah, we haven't seen that in anything yet. How the classes are actually going to somehow, be better. There's a lot of ways. I think maybe we can talk about that actually next. Of how they can do that. Volspa said we know that Dragon's body fluids carry potent reagents that are used in potions. Maybe DKs have some unique interaction with coagulating blood, potion usage, and the spiked armor spray. Voss, I think that's a really interesting concept. I think what you're on there is kind of what we're talking about. Like, how do we think of something that could be unique to the DK as far as in thematically, and also a unique mechanic, and how want the because I am generally of the opinion that you should come up with the theming, and that should lead you to a skill or an ability. And so I think you're absolutely on the right path there. That way, all three can use them. Yeah. Frog says, I suppose attrition could be interpreted as ramping over time rather than just dots. That's really interesting too, Frog. Yeah. What if you had that could be another way um, of dividing out where maybe you have one that's really consistent damage, one that has ramping damage, so the fight needs to be a certain length for them to have maximum damage, and another one that might have burst. That's a great example of ways of doing that. Yeah, that's really good. And there's probably a fourth and a fifth way of doing this sort of things. A lot of times what I hear in my comments, and I don't blame anybody for the average person, but to me, the cardinals the cardinal sin, the unforgivable sin in game design is having a lack of imagination, and of thinking that just because something hasn't been done, or that thinking that there's no way of doing something. I think I constantly try to challenge myself in that regard, and I think we should always challenge ourselves. I often have people that will put out comments that are like, oh, they couldn't possibly do this, and it's like, most of the time, and again, the average person doesn't think about game design nearly as much as I do, and certainly not as much as game developers do. But and this is something I'm particularly interested in, that, most people, yeah, it's just, they say, oh, this can't be done. There's no way of doing this. And I can think of 3 ways off the top of my head that it could be done. And, maybe it causes other problems and it's difficult and whatever, but it's, again, you just, so that's game design. You have to figure it out. You have to solve it. Volspa said, well, all the classes have a unique mechanic, sort of. They're soft mechs like Sacred Ground, for example. Volsboss, I mean, that's fair, that's valid, but I don't think that and I do think they try to do that with individual skills. Yeah, Nani points it out. That's a skill mech versus a class mech. Yeah, exactly. And I think we're talking about something that would also be much more impactful. And I think that it has to go from just being a single skill to being the class itself for it to be more impactful, having meters of things that you build up, et cetera, et cetera. Frog says the fact that they don't even mention lightning in the Sork description is disheartening. Oh, that's interesting. And then Luna said it all, Frog, literally the coolest thematic of Sorcerer is the lightning. Yeah. No Sacred Ground is a passive of Templar that interacts with the restoring light skills and the class script. Oh, you know what? I also was thinking of of a particular skill. I still think that is, like, that's kind of okay. Most of the passives are just things that automatically happen, though. These are not active things. They happen when a skill happens or whatever, but I think we're talking about something that's interactive and is qualitatively different. Not that there's anything wrong with those. I call it a soft mechanic because ZOS doesn't really focus on it in the same degree as Crux, but it's also not a one-off. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could talk about that, Boss Boss. You have some very valid points here. I wasn't disagreeing with you, by the way. I was just saying the sort of class mechanics we have are bare bones. Sacred Ground isn't that deep. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of to the point of off balance being a thing. Like, it is a thing, but it's like so weak that it's kind of not a thing too. So I think there's some blurry lines there for sure. And then Jax, what's going on, Jax? The statue in the desert is for ESO Big Game Awards announcement for sure. Yeah. Yeah, that was a lot there. I think I mentioned something that we should maybe move on to next, and I don't even remember what it was going through all those.
Yeah, like about the classes and the theme, one thing that I would like to say, like to talk about, is that we have one big issue with thematics. Every skill line is a different theme, and if we're taking account like of subclassing, I feel like the classes should be split into every skill line interacting more with itself and not other skill lines, because this creates kind of an issue, a weird thing, like something that won't feel right playing. Like, of course, we need something to counterbalance that as well, because like if they're considering like pure class to being stronger, of course you should. My idea is you unlock extra passives and extra interactions when you like have the same skill lines from the same class, or let's say you have all the 3, you unlock some passives that are very strong and very interesting. But we should think about the skill lines entirely separately. Like, that's why for me this image doesn't work, because I cannot mix ice with animals with nature. I cannot mix like Daedric pets with lightning. How do I mix that? I don't understand. And with dark magic, those are 3 different like schools of magic, like entirely different. Like, you can associate like dark magic with Daedric summoning. It's kind of a little bit the same, but not quite. And what does it have to do with lightning? We should like split them and work them individually, and then provide something like that kind of bonds them together in some passives or interactions. But we should start seeing them like separately, because if we consider subclassing came to the game to stay, and that's definitely the case, we should see the game differently now. We cannot see the classes the same way we were seeing before. And that's why for me this image doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that and I mentioned this before, that basically what they did is that when ESO, and I know you know this, Linus, but just to explain to everybody else, when ESO first came out, people were expecting an Elder Scrolls game, and they got something different, and they didn't like it. But now it's 12 years on, and a lot of people, all they know is the Elder Scrolls Online. And so to them, these classes are really important. I think that they just have to, like, I don't think there's any going back, honestly. And I don't think they should even try. What I would say, so to reference to all those other games, because I've played every Elder Scroll game there is, and I started with the oldest ones. A Nightblade, for an example, I played a Nightblade. A Nightblade in the older games was a combination of a thief and a magic user, and you chose those thief and those magic user abilities, and then they called it a Nightblade. Okay, the name was slapped on it after the fact, and essentially, what you would then expect for Elder Scrolls Online is that if we looked at the constituent skill lines and we combined those two, then we created the Nightblade. And if we chose, and that would be two things, but and so now I think what we should look at and what would make sense is would require a complete redesign of the game. And to make a sorcerer, to make a warden, to make any of these things, what would for it to make sense for Elder Scrolls would be to take all those constituent class lines and somehow combine them into something that made fucking sense, which, as you point out, it does not. And then that be the class. And I think that is really how they should move forward. And again, we're talking about a complete redesign of the classes in ESO. And I think that one of the things that I continually come back to is, and I'll both sides this, one of the things we continually come back to is that there is a lot of really cool ideas and a lot of really cool things that they could do. And continually, every time we talk about them, I think that all of us that have been around for any length of time also know that there's no way they would ever do that. And it seems like they're incapable of doing that personally. Now, that does not mean that it's still not a fun game and it can't be a great game that we all love to play and everything else. It just means it's probably never going to be what we would ideally like it to be. But I agree with you completely that I don't know how to make sense of a warden that is animals, ice, and making plants bloom. Like, I don't know how. And that was unfortunately the sins of those who came before who made those choices. Some of them make sense and others just completely don't. Yeah. Yeah, Frog said, yeah, that's what I meant with each skill line having its own domain. I think it's the catering to two different demographics problem again. Single player demo dislikes classes, but MMO player demo likes classes. I actually think I don't know. I almost see that being reversed, Frog, but I don't know because it almost seems like the single players are the ones that they want to play a class and they want to play something simple. I think that again this comes back to really good game design. Really good game design. So chess is a great game, been around for a long time. A lot of people still really love to play it. Learning the rules to chess.
Patch notes like for 2,000 years, right? Like no.
Yeah, no
Crazy.
patch notes for 2,000 years. Yeah, and well, the game has evolved some slightly, but not a whole lot. But you have very simple to understand rules, and then you have very simple mechanics essentially. And then how you use them together is what makes the game complex and interesting and fun. And yes, it's a simple game. Modern games are much more complex than that. But I think you want the same. You always want these same concepts, and you also want, again, the players thinking of, hey, I want to make a build that does this, this, and this, and you want to know what they were going to do or have some vague idea and have that lead into something that makes sense. I don't think I would any player that I know of would ever have designed the warden. I don't think it makes sense. You're putting 3 skill lines, and I think that is one of the core problems that ESO has is that they have these things that just are incongruous and don't make sense together, and it doesn't lead. And when you have that, players will find what is optimal very easily, and they will find what is good. It doesn't have to be completely optimal. We're talking about degrees here, but it would just lead them into what is optimal, and we don't. That's good game design. And it's very hard to do that. And again, I think we see that ZOS kind of fails at that typically. Yeah.
I think at this point, honestly, like my opinion, I have to close this out because I have to go now
Yeah,
like to
yeah,
run, but
yeah.
like just to finish like my thought process and my suggestion to this idea, we should make we should maybe um not to a full extent, but we should maybe like leave the class like entirely the class design away. We just should let it go like classes, because Warden doesn't make sense, Dragon Knight doesn't make sense, Templar doesn't make sense. We should
Yeah.
approach the skill lines individually, and maybe we use like a more generic name for like this is like, let's say you have like necromancy, not necromancer. You have necromancy, and you have 3 skill lines inside necromancy. That kind of makes sense to this like art of magic or something. Like this is a skill line, not, it's not a class. You can play with all the skill lines from that archetype or magic school or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, you have necromancy, and then you have those 3. You have like stuff from the arcane. You have like sorcery. You have like, and then inside those you have individual stuff that you need to be that you can pick up, but you don't need like this full concept. Maybe you could unlock a full concept of a class. Let's say you're playing all the 3 skill lines, you gain some buffs. Like if we want to still like touch pure class and still being viable, you should definitely like, oh, you pick the 3 things from this like school of magic or whatever or archetype. Oh, now you become a necromancer, and now you call it
Yeah.
necromancer, and because you have those buffs that like, and necromancer became a
100%.
buff. It like becomes a buff with passives, and oh, you put the 3 skill lines together, now you're a necromancer and you have this and this and this extra to whenever you're playing. But we're not thinking necromancer as a class anymore. We're thinking like as necromancy, as something as a whole, and you can pick up like pieces of it or it entirely, and then you have something else. I think we should completely change like the way we see the game. Otherwise, it won't work properly. Like the balance and the design and the like thematics.
Yeah, I think you're right. Luna, I won't keep you. Thank you so much for joining me and chatting. I always really enjoy these talks.
Yeah, yeah. Those are fun. Those are fun. Love talking about games. Love talking about games that we love. Because, like, in the end, this is something that we should make clear. We love ESO. Otherwise, we would never waste that much
100%.
time in this game. Even though we may hate the way it's going, we definitely love this game. There's so many things I love about this game that I cannot find anywhere else. That is like, we just need to like acknowledge that. So thank you. It's always very good to talk about ESO and very good to be here, Knight.
Thanks, Luna. Appreciate it. And I'll give you a shout out once you're gone, but we'll catch you later.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night, everybody.
Later. All right, guys. Check out Luna Kairu. You can find her here on YouTube, guys. She's doing some different stuff. She's playing some different games, and she's also looking at. I think she's trying to figure out what she wants to do with her channel, and I think she's going to do a little bit more stuff with music, for which she has a lot of background in. So give her a shout out. I actually I was like, why am I not subscribed? And then I realized this is this is the just stream watching thing, and I don't subscribe to anything here because I don't want it to mess with the feed. So I'm actually not going to. But go check her out. I'm subscribed on several of my channels. I have like personal, and then obviously ESO. But yeah, Luna is incredibly knowledgeable and has a lot of really good thoughts on this stuff, which is why I enjoy talking to her. And it's something where her qualification is her expertise, and it is clear and obvious. You know, to kind of go back, I think there's plenty of this stuff that we can. We won't go too much longer here. We'll start to wrap up, but I do want to say a handful of things and catch up on these comments. I think one of the, I do think that ESO has to. I don't think they can go back to the classes. I think they're going to try to do something that is going to make everybody happy, and I think it's a little bit doomed from the beginning. I do think there are better ways to do this and what have you. And I do think it's unfortunate that the people in charge now are not the ones that were before, to very small degrees, right? Like they were lower levels at the company and stuff like that. And I will give a quote from a Southern Baptist preacher, which is the area that I grew up in, which is it's easier to give birth than to raise the dead. And I think that's absolutely true. It would be easier to start off from scratch than for them to try to Frankenstein something from these past skill lines. And, and again, to give you hope, because it's not all bad, right? Like, again, we care about the game and we're hopeful for it. I think what we are hoping for and the thing that we can actually get from all of this is going to be if if it's fun, nothing else matters. Okay, this is like the chief commandment, right? Of game design is make it fun. It has to be fun. If it is fun, then kind of nothing else matters. If they screw up, and I would say this too. This is the problem. They're getting a lot of feedback on like, oh, I miss my class. I miss my class. What people I think are really saying is that multi-classing isn't fun for them, and I think that is the real problem. And I think that they're missing the forest for all the trees here is a big part of what Zoss is doing. But at the same time, as long as they just make it fun, again, nothing else will matter. And I think making the classes with new sound design, new animations, while also addressing some of the issues, I think they could do that. So I still think they could make improvements that would make it to the point where we are all still very happy with the game and will continue to play and have fun. Maybe bring some of the people back. I know a lot of people are getting, are leaving. I just wish that they, when um, I used to manage and I would actually consult and go fix restaurants that were broken, and I prefer like fine dining, higher end dining, and this has been done, but this has been done by other people. But you'll have like some places will have like a list of rules, and this is something we would often do. And it's kind of specific to the situation. In this case, the restaurant would be the equivalent of the game. And you have a list of things that you just need to always keep in mind, and maybe things that you struggle with and you're not doing right. And I think for ESO and for the developers at ZOS, a couple of things is like there's too many changes and they keep happening too often. That should be one of the things that they have pinned to a wall somewhere that they continually look at and go, hey, no more changes, like minimize changes. People are tired of it. It's too much. That this is a core thing that we need to keep in mind. Okay. It's not a pillar or whatever, silly kind of, talk that is so common nowadays, which is like, it's like gaming corporate speak, using words that eventually just don't mean anything. But that's a core concept that they need to keep in mind. Okay. And then when you think of other things that, and then just go through the list, there's quite a few more than I can really go through right now. But I think that they need to, there's a lot of things that as they do all this other stuff, just because you haven't gotten feedback in the last 5 minutes or the last 5 days or the last 5 months about there being too many changes does not mean that it's not still true. Because if you ask people for feedback about a specific thing, they're not giving you general feedback. So they're not going to keep telling you that generally, hopefully. But you should know that that's a really important thing. And there's a lot of things like that. And it seems like in a lot of ways, ZOS as an entity, as a corporation, seems to have the memory of they're like a bunch of Dories walking around. They forgot whatever you told them 5 minutes ago, and they're on to the new thing. And it's like, no, you need to keep in mind that we want you to stop changing things every 5 minutes, while also addressing the issues that we want you to address. And I think that is one of the things that is particularly problematic for ZOS, and one of the things they would really help them solve and help them. We just spend a lot of time kind of daydreaming, right? Talking about really fun, cool ideas, and some of these they could be done. But again, I don't think any of us realistically have a lot of hope for ZOS doing these things, making these big of changes. But even if with like measured expectations, if they would just keep a lot of these consistent feedback things in mind, while also trying to just make the game fun. And we talked about this earlier, like I think Frog or maybe Voss Boss or someone mentioned it, maybe it was somebody else, maybe it was Wampus or somebody. But there is you have to listen to your customers. Especially in gaming, because oftentimes they know more about the product than you do at some point. At the same time, as a game designer, you need to have the confidence and the knowledge. Okay, you need to have the knowledge and the expertise, and from that comes the confidence to sometimes say, the players are wrong, but once I show them what I'm going to do, they're going to get on board. And that's something is absolutely crucial to making a great game. You can make a good game without that, but I don't think you can make a great game without that. You need to have, and there are times where I've been surprised, like I don't think this is going to work, and then you see what they do, and it is kind of it's a hold my beer moment, but instead of like wrecking themselves, they actually like do something really cool. right? And I think that that is also something that it could be really core, and that I think we'd really like to see come out of ZOS. This is my like genuine heartfelt advice for them, if I could give it. So, let me catch up on these comments real quick. Yeah, that's what I meant by each class, each skill line having its own domain. Frog said, I think it's catering to. Oh, I'm sorry, we already talked about that. You know, it'd be cool. Pet Sork is very boring and non-interactive. What if, like, you could summon progressively stronger Daedra, and they came with their own mini game of maintenance and control of it? Voss Boss, that's a really cool idea, man. That would be a really cool, towards what Luna was saying, like, having that maybe, or I don't know if it was Luna, but having that class skill line sort of mechanic, that would be super cool. Frog says, what other games have done is not predefine classes with 3 skill lines, but rather define a class based on the specific skill line combo that the player chooses. Oh, interesting. Okay. And then Vossball says, I want a Titan. Zos, let me summon a Titan. We can still play at any level, at any method, at any way. We do not have to be meta to be successful at the game. Yeah, I know this is like out of context, so I'm not sure exactly where you're going with that, Wampus. But yeah, it's funny because I did have a friend who's a very sweaty in-game player tell me the other day that they took a break for the game for a while, and they've done this more than once. But they now like, man, people are acting crazy. Like he pointed out that people were saying that like Hyper had like fallen off with his guides because he made some guides that were more generally helpful for people, like some heavy attack builds and stuff like that. And I would say that even then, his heavy attack builds were still very complicated and probably not quite what I think he could have even toned them down even more for a more general audience. But because he had done it at all, or suggested there were different styles of play, that they were like hating on him. And like they weren't hating on him, but they were just like, yeah, he's kind of falling off or whatever. And I think that's very common in the ESO in-game community. I mean, it's something I've been fighting for years and years. And it's like, dude, if something can do 140k damage max theoretical, like that's more than enough. You don't need 170k. You don't need 150k. And he was just like, I don't understand why people are freaking out about this stuff because you just have so much more damage than you possibly need. And it's like, yeah, exactly. And it was funny. He was like telling me this, and he was kind of like, why aren't you saying anything? And I'm like, dude, I've been on this page for years and years, and that's what I've been saying for years and years. And there's a lot of people in the in-game community that have hated on me for suggesting that idea. And I do think that there is some of that, it is some of the truth where the some of the creators of Civilization series have said that, if you give players the opportunity, they'll optimize the fun out of the game. And while I think that is generally a silly comment, like that most players are not like that, I do think some players do get to that point where you're like, I think really what for some players optimizing is how one of the ways they have fun, which is why I think that statement is a very dumb statement. It's a very ignorant statement and shows that you don't understand players. So I don't like it. I don't agree with it. But like there is like that's where it comes from. When you have people that are like, "Oh, you're an idiot." This clearly on 150k basis, doing this will give you 151k, less than 1% increase, and you're a fucking idiot if you would do anything different than that. And you're like, hold up there, partner. Let's friggin' tone it down a little bit there. Unfortunately, we have that. Just a Miss says the problem with ZOS is they don't listen to the community. Yeah, that has long been their problem. Mist, I'm hoping with some of these changes that is, with the changes and I think they are really trying to listen. I don't know if they're capable. I don't know if, and when I say that, I don't know if they have the structures in place at ZOS to be able to get good feedback. And I also don't believe that they have the culture or the people necessarily at ZOS to be able to hear that feedback. But I do think they're trying. And you know what? I believe in people's capacity for change. So fingers crossed. Frog said, is just agreeing that's true, but there's still a lack of playstyle diversity in the game despite that. Yeah. The amazing Luna, yes, and everybody's saying thanks to Luna. Yeah, Luna's awesome. I'm so glad she joined. And we're actually, I think later on this week, we're going to be playing and trying out some other games with Luna. And I think we're going to be, she's got some friends who are going to try out, Ashes of Creation. So I think we might be playing some Ashes of Creation later in the week with her, hopefully. So yeah, that's the plan. Appreciate it, Frog. It's easier to give birth and raise the dead. Necromancer, am I a joke to you? Well, I'm just saying the Necromancer's working hard. That's all I mean. Um, they mean they miss the identity they had, the feeling of when playing. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, Mist, I just think it's how fickle and how kind of silly sometimes it can be at the end game, man. Um, you know, I don't have, I think Hyper has always provided really great information. I don't always like, you know, I don't always like a lot of the in game folks with how they treat people and how they feel like if you're right, it's okay to be an asshole. And unfortunately, that comes up way too often. So that's why I also kind of stand apart from a lot of those guys because I just don't want to have anything to do with a lot of that sometimes. But yeah, I think he's always provided really good and solid info, and he's done some crazy things, man. I don't like his. I don't. Wasn't he like up for over 24 hours, probably 36 or something, doing like the endless archive and stuff? That's kind of wild to be able to do that. Be that locked in for that long. No, thank you. I'll totally agree, man. Competence is not mutually exclusive with good character. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the win conditions on the game of life. You got to decide what you're going for. Clearly, some of the wealthier execs are willing to sell out anything to get more money in the bank because they think that that's how they win or something. But no, I don't know. You gotta think about it and decide what your win condition is for life because we all get to decide that. Yeah, 24. I think it was more than that, Nani. Yeah, the energy and madness of the youth. Yeah. Miss said the class design team have to have better communication with the PvE content creators. Every single new expansion, the update that comes out with class changes will make something so broke they have to change the goalposts of DPS, new sets, new techniques for new damage ceiling. Let's nerf the trial. Let's buff this trial. They need to communicate before releasing a thing. Oh, and PTS. What is the point of PTS when they don't take any feedback? Yeah. I know but you're preaching to the choir. Yeah, 100% Frog. Like I agree with that. Um, some of the Discord servers for endgame raid groups are basically toxic wastelands. Yeah, 100% Azure. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I used to like I went into the ESOU Discord when Nephis did his thing where he's trying to promote in game, and I was like, you know what, man, maybe I'll go over there and try to like help promote in game. And I would get people would clip stuff where people were talking mad shit about me and send it to me, and it was like, all right, whatever. Yeah, it was pretty bad. Missed towards your point there. As far as them communicating, I think this is a problem that most game companies have, honestly, where even when they did have some creators that were like where they were like trying to listen to their feedback. If you look at the list of people, and I don't know all those people, so don't pick a name and be like, oh, I'm saying this about this person because I don't know who all was on there. A lot of times, those people though, that they when they did have this, I don't think it worked very well for them. First off, that was really a marketing thing. They're trying to get people that will influence the community, and that's what they're choosing is a big part of it. And then when they were listening, they were people that had agendas. I mean, Nephis would literally like make very vague, like slightly joking videos where he was like he did some videos where he was entirely in character about how bad the Dragon Knight class was because he just wanted it to be better because that was his favorite class, and that's not what you want, right? And then the other thing is the character on a lot of those people were part of the toxic in-game community, and I don't think that's what you want. You want people like Skinny Cheeks would be a great one, right? Skinny Cheeks really cares about that everybody's having fun. He's also very knowledgeable, and finding people like that and listening to them. I think that is what I think, and I think that's the thing that most game companies struggle with the most is they don't know how to find and grab those people. And then there's also those people that like there's the okay, yeah, we want to listen to these guys because the developers want to hear their feedback, but then there's also the marketing people that are also have their own desires and wants, and those things are usually at odds, or can often cause problems and stuff like that. I personally feel like I have a lot of feedback I could give for not just ESO but other games as well. And when it's a small indie company, I mentioned this the other day, but this is an amazing game, and I can't wait for it to come out, guys. But the folks over at this is not the game. Was it O? Was it O and Co? Maybe that's it. Let me find the YouTube channel. Yeah, O and Co Games. Yeah, and they're making the game they're making is Tethergeist. This is like a 3-person company, and they recently got picked up or whatever. I really like these guys, and I think it's going to be a great game. I played this on stream a while back, so if you'd like to check it out. But whenever I played it on stream, I recorded, obviously streaming, I'm recording, and I posted it to them. And as I was playing, I was stream of consciousness saying all the problems I had, and things I really liked too, and things I didn't like, and things I wish could be a little bit different. I told them much of this stuff was just incredibly just way too difficult, which is a common thing with indie creators because they play their own games so much that they become experts at it. And they watched that and they said thank you, and then they said they're redesigning all of their whole take on level design because, and I don't want to overstate it, but I think that's literally what they said because of my video, and they'd already play tested this a bunch. But now they were getting feedback from someone who honestly probably knows a lot more about games and about how different people will take on things, because that's literally my job, right? So let's hope I'm at least half decent at my job. So I'm better than the average gamer at giving that kind of feedback. And it was so awesome to hear that. Like I really appreciate it because I want to give this free advice to games companies. But I also want to be respected in my advice. And I don't, and I'm going to be honest, like maybe this is, I don't really think it's arrogance, but like I have expertise in game design because of what I do. I'm not always right, okay, but I do have an expertise, and I don't want my advice to be taken the same as some jerk who's just like throwing random stuff at the wall who doesn't know anything about game design or the back end coding that is required to make games and stuff like that. But I think this is a real problem. And I think any games I've never had, I'll put it this way, I've never had great experience with any game like bigger than an indie game where I can't have a one-on-one conversation. And with those indie games, they're not getting enough feedback and they're trying to get it. I have this problem with YouTube. I want more feedback than I can possibly get. And then at a certain point that reverses and you get more feedback than you can possibly sort through, and you don't know what to take and what to keep and what have you. So it is a problem. I think they could solve it, but yeah, it's a continual problem for most game companies. I do hope whatever revamp that comes out would bring back class identities, because I'm tired of staring at my screen for 5 seconds every 5 seconds. Yeah. I mean, I hit the beam and then I'm like drinking some tea or whatever. Hey, what's up? What's going on, Lenny? I was talking about you earlier, man. I don't know if your ears were burning. Yeah, dude, we're kind of finishing up. Actually, I was just about to say goodbye, dude. So you catch it on the end, but maybe you can. We're kind of daydreaming a little bit and talking about some stuff, doing a little theory crafting, and I realized that Hyper had a data leak, so we watched that video at the beginning. But guys, we'll call it here for today. I appreciate you for tuning in. I will probably be back on later, I hope, with some Civ. We'll have to see. I have some other stuff I have to do, but if not, we'll be back tomorrow for that. But we'll call it here for today. The rest of the week, we might have some really sweaty VCR zero portals going on tomorrow and Wednesday, but I have to see if the group fills. That would be with Daedric's group. And if not, then we'll probably be doing, a lot of people were tuning in for Civ. Seems like people are looking for some Civ content. I finally picked up Civ 7, so we'll be doing that some more. But we got plenty of ESO, and then Thursday and Friday we have our normal groups. So we'll go from there. And also Friday we've got some tabletops and what have you. And the healer video for the Blightbloom healer. So it's a Warden Necro Nightblade healer is also out. It's out now for channel members, and it'll be out for everybody else in a few days. So, all right, guys, have a great day. It's great to see everybody. I appreciate all you guys, Boss, Frog, Nani, Lenny. I appreciate you popping in at the end. Miss, it's been a little bit. Appreciate you. Azzer, appreciate your comment there. It feels good to hear confirmation that I'm not just crazy sometimes with some of that stuff. So I appreciate you dropping that comment like you did. Of course, Luna, Wampus, good to see you, man. I know we got different names, man. I'm trying to keep it straight there as well. And I just like going through and saying I appreciate to all the people. So I'm just gonna scroll through. Who else am I forgetting here? There were probably some other people earlier. I know there were actually. Oh, Tangi, I appreciate your comments as well. That spurred some good conversation. Who else we got? I'm probably missing somebody, guys. Say goodbye if I'm missing you. All right, I know I'm missing some more. Chicken always tunes in. He's at work right now. That's why he's not saying anything. Crude Red and Hunter, man, I appreciate you always being here. Hunter, hope you're having a good day, man. All right, guys, we will call it here. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you tomorrow, if not sooner. All right, thanks everybody.